Welcome to the Deep Dive, the place where we take stacks of sources, research, and exclusive reports, and really just distill them into the crucial knowledge you need to be immediately informed.
And today, we are tackling something massive.
We really are. It's a huge operational and political analysis, and it's all centered on an event that it's completely reshaped the geopolitical map.
The military capture of Venezuelan President Nicolas Maduro.
Exactly. And the operation, in its ambition and scope, was so significant that we're simply calling this deep dive Breaking America.
And that title, Breaking America, it speaks not just to the dramatic nature of the event itself, but to the legal and strategic gravity of the source material we're relying on today.
Which is pretty incredible stuff.
It really is. Our primary source is an exclusive, highly detailed interview with President Donald Trump, and it was conducted almost immediately after the operation concluded.
So this isn't, a high-level summary.
No, not at all. This is the commander-in-chief detailing the nuts and bolts of one of the riskiest military actions in recent memory.
That's right. So our mission today is to move past the headlines.
Way past them.
And unpack the specific, granular, operational details, the intense planning, the extraordinary methods of preparation, the lightning-fast execution by elite forces.
And then the fallout.
And then, critically, the immediate and very polarized political and legal fallout that followed this move. Trump himself didn't mince words. He called it extremely complex.
Then we need to figure out why.
We do.
So I think let's start with the basics. We need to set the scene for you, the listener. You have to understand who the target was, and maybe more importantly, the specific legal justification the U.S. used to authorize this.
A military action against a sitting head of state.
Precisely.
Okay, so who is Nicolas Maduro?
Well, he is the president of Venezuela, or was. But the U.S. administration, and this is confirmed in the sources, views him explicitly as a dictator.
Not just a dictator, right?
No, as a dictator running a narco state. So the decision to capture him wasn't simply a political preference. It had a clear, and I'd say powerful, legal underpinning that allowed the military to execute the whole thing under the banner of law enforcement.
And that legal basis is probably the single most important piece of context here.
I'd agree with that.
The sources confirm that Maduro and his wife, they were ultimately destined for a very specific place, New York City, to face indictment.
Exactly. The charges they're scheduled to face in a U.S. federal courtroom are, frankly, staggering. The indictment includes charges of narco-terrorism conspiracy.
Narco-terrorism conspiracy.
And that term, it's not arbitrary. It fundamentally redefines the U.S. government's perspective on the entire Venezuelan state. It treats it not as a legitimate government, but as a criminal enterprise.
Which, legally speaking, changes everything.
It sets the stage for what the U.S. views as a justifiable action against a criminal leader rather than an unprovoked attack on a sovereign nation.
And the timeline really emphasizes that immediate judicial intent. The capture occurred just before January 3rd, 2026.
Right.
And the arraignment was expected as soon as Monday. So this wasn't about establishing some future possibility of justice.
No. This was a military action designed to directly facilitate an immediate criminal justice proceeding. The operation was really just the delivery method for an indictment that was already signed and sealed.
A high-stakes international arrest.
That's the framing. Absolutely. The speed from capture to court underscores that this was not a regime change operation dressed up as humanitarian aid.
Okay, so let's unpack this operation itself, because the resources we have give us a pretty rare look behind the curtain of, executive decision-making and special ops prep.
The strategic brain of the mission.
Exactly. Let's start with the command center and the high-level oversight.
Right. And, the location of the oversight. That in itself is a detail worth noting. President Trump confirmed that he, and I'm quoting here, huddled with generals at his Mar-a-Lago residence in Florida.
Yeah, Mar-a-Lago.
In Florida. And that detail alone, it just immediately signals the level of presidential interest, the hands-on involvement here.
So it wasn't just delegated down the chain of command.
Not at all. It suggests that while, yes, the operational control rested with the Department of War, the final political and strategic approvals and the close monitoring were executed directly from the commander-in-chief's chosen location.
And that remote involvement is fascinating. Trump stated they watched every aspect of this extremely complex operation as it unfolded.
Every aspect.
What does that even imply? What are the technical requirements for something like that?
Oh, it implies a highly sophisticated level of real-time intelligence feed. and a command and control infrastructure routed directly to the president.
So we're talking secure comms, visual feeds.
Think about the bandwidth, the secure communications, the video, all required to maintain that kind of situational awareness from Florida to, a potentially distant, hostile urban environment.
It puts a ton of pressure on the guys on the ground.
A huge amount. If the president is watching every angle, it means the entire planning staff, the intel community, the tactical leadership, they all understood there was a zero-tolerance standard for error.
And that focus on operational perfection, it brings us to what I think is the most astonishing nugget of information in our source material.
I know what you're going to say.
The level of military preparation undertaken for this specific mission is, it's almost unheard of for a high-value target capture.
This is where the story really shifts from just a high-stakes capture to a military masterclass in preparation. The planning was obsessive.
Which suggests what?
It suggests the U.S. military viewed this target location and the operation itself as uniquely challenging.
We're talking about the blueprint replica.
Yes.
U.S. forces didn't just study photos or, schematics. They physically recreated the entire environment.
And you really need to let that sink in for a moment. This goes so far beyond standard procedure.
Which would be what? Sand tables?
Sand tables, digital modeling, maybe some mock-ups of a few rooms. But here, U.S. forces actually built a house identical to the one they went into just for practice.
And it wasn't just a shell.
No, the replication wasn't superficial at all. It included specific high-security details. The source mentions all the safes, all the steel, all over the place.
So this isn't just about practicing breach points. This is about simulating the entire kinetic environment down to the materials themselves.
That's it.
Why go to that extreme expense and time? This must have taken weeks, if not months, of logistical effort, building a full replica with structural steel.
It speaks volumes about the target's perceived defensive strength and, more than anything, the critical need for speed.
How does steel change the equation?
Steel structures change everything in a kinetic entry. Your standard explosive breaching charges, the kind you might use on wood or drywall, they're useless against hardened steel.
So if you hit a steel door you weren't expecting?
You're stuck. If a team has to spend even 3 minutes improvising a thermal breach with a blowtorch, the entire element of surprise is gone. The risk to the operators just skyrockets.
So by building the replica, they weren't just practicing entry.
They were calibrating their tools. They were rehearsing contingency breaching methods against the exact gauge of steel they knew they would encounter. They were training for sound signatures, for light refraction, the exact feel of the door.
It's incredible. So Trump's comment that everything was pinpoint, everything they practiced is, it's the ultimate justification for this whole approach.
It really is. It demonstrates what's called a full-scale rehearsal, an FSR, that seeks to eliminate all the unknown variables you get in urban warfare.
So when Delta Force hit the ground,
their bodies already knew the distance to the target, the exact weight of the steel door they had to neutralize, the floor plan, even if the lights were off or the room was full of smoke. This is a level of risk mitigation that just screams failure is not an option.
And this kind of operation, it required meticulous coordination between the intelligence gathering arm and the kinetic capture force.
A classic partnership.
Who was responsible for what? Who found them and who went in?
The roles were very distinct and highly specialized. The CIA provided the crucial, actionable intelligence.
Which is a coup in itself.
Oh, absolutely. Finding a high-value target who moves frequently and operates within a sophisticated security bubble, that's a massive intelligence win.
And once they had the location confirmed?
Once the location was confirmed and the strike package was approved, the physical capture, the surgical high-speed entry, restraint, and extraction that was performed by the U.S. Army's elite Delta Force.
And the decision to use Delta Force is telling.
It is. While other U.S. Special Operations groups are certainly capable, Delta Force specializes in this exact kind of thing, counterterrorism and direct action against high-value targets. They focus on precise, low-visibility incursions.
So their selection suggests the mandate prioritized speed, minimal collateral damage, and just overwhelming immediate force.
It's the classic joint model. CIA finds, Delta Force finishes.
And yet, despite all this hyper-detailed planning, the construction of the replica house, the sources reveal a fascinating constraint. The mission kept getting delayed.
The timing. Trump stated that the initial plan was to capture Maduro 4 days ago, 3 days ago, 2 days ago. They were ready to go.
But they kept waiting. Why?
The reason given was very specific. U.S. forces had to wait for the right weather conditions.
Weather.
For a complex special forces insertion and extraction, which we know involved aircraft, weather is a non-negotiable factor.
So what are the specific meteorological variables that could hold back a mission like this, even when you've practiced it to death in a replica?
Well, there are a few key variables. If the operation involved helicopter insertion, which is highly likely for a mission like this,
Right.
then wind shear and ceiling visibility are paramount. High winds can make precise fast roping impossible, and they increase the danger of a rotor strike or even a crash.
And low cloud cover.
Low ceilings or a low cloud ceiling affects the ability of your air support. Whether that's surveillance drones or attack helicopters, they can't monitor the perimeter or provide immediate support if the ground team is compromised.
Even something like heavy rain or fog could neutralize a sniper's overwatch.
Completely. So delaying a time-sensitive, politically explosive mission for 4 days, it just demonstrates a profound commitment to force protection.
They chose the risk of losing the target over the risk of catastrophic failure due to the environment.
Exactly. The decision to hold off signals at the operational window had to be perfect. They waited for the moment when the real-world conditions matched the perfect rehearsed conditions they had achieved in that replica house,
They prioritized certainty over schedule.
which in special operations is often the difference between success and disaster.
And that brings us directly to the action itself. Let's move into the third phase of our deep dive, the target location, this fortress, and the surprising details of the actual capture.
Yeah, and when we look at the house itself, you immediately understand why they needed that replica.
What did Trump call it?
He described the location as very highly guarded and characterized it as more like a fortress than a house,
So this wasn't just a residential building. It was a hardened target.
designed specifically to repel or at least delay hostile action.
And what does that mean in terms of physical defenses that the U.S. forces had to neutralize?
So beyond the expected guards and perimeter security, the internal structure was the main challenge. The sources specify that the house had layers of defense, including external and internal steel doors.
Choke points.
Exactly, designed to slow down any breach attempt. But the ultimate defensive feature was a specialized internal area called a safety space.
The panic room. The ultimate secure retreat.
Yes, and it was described as being solid steel all around. We're talking about a bunker designed to withstand not just small arms fire, but potentially explosive charges and a sustained assault.
So if Maduro had reached that space and sealed the door,
The mission would have instantly transformed from a surgical capture into a potentially long, politically disastrous siege.
and they had prepared for that siege, they brought the contingency equipment just in case.
They did. But the execution phase, it just defied all expectations of a long fight. It all came down to sheer speed measured in milliseconds.
And the description of the attack is incredibly visceral. It tells the whole story. Maduro got bum-rushed so fast he couldn't secure himself.
That phrase, bum rushed, which probably came right from one of the generals briefing the president, it just encapsulates the core strategy of Delta Force.
Overwhelming speed and violence of action.
They executed what's known in the community as a dynamic entry. It's designed to collapse the OTA, loop observe, orient, decide, act of the security detail, and the target himself.
So his security team couldn't even react.
They couldn't observe the full threat, orient to the breach point, decide on a countermeasure, or act to secure their principal before Delta Force was already inside and on top of them.
And the proof of that successful operational speed is the specific failure of the safety system.
Yes.
Maduro was actively trying to get into that solid steel safety space, but as the source says, he didn't get that space closed.
That detail is monumental. It suggests he was within touching distance of total security, but the reaction time he needed to seal that heavy door was completely negated by the speed of the assault force.
All that training in the identical replica house.
It paid off in that single instant. Every entry path, every corner, every angle was known. It allowed the operators to move with such predatory efficiency that the most important security measure, that solid steel bunker, became totally irrelevant.
And because of that rapid entry, all that heavy, expensive contingency hardware,
Wasn't even necessary.
the planning for the siege was essential, but the execution prevented it.
Exactly. The preparation was for the worst-case, maximum resistance scenario. The sources detail that U.S. forces had massive blowtorches and everything else ready, specifically to get through that internal steel fortress.
That they never had to use them.
Because Maduro didn't make it to that area of the house, they weren't needed. The sheer speed of the entry turned a potential armored siege into an immediate arrest.
Now, in any high-stakes, violent action like this, against a heavily guarded target, the safety of the forces involved is, well, it's paramount.
Of course.
We have to address the operational outcomes regarding casualties,
And this is a crucial metric for the success of any special ops mission. President Trump confirmed his belief that no U.S. forces were killed.
which is incredible.
Given the complexity and the inherent risk of breaching a fortress, achieving the primary objective with zero American loss of life is a significant testament to the training and the execution.
But there were injuries. What do we know about the forces that were hit?
The sources do mention that a couple of guys were hit, but the important follow-up detail is that they recovered quickly and are reported to be supposed to be in pretty good shape.
So what does hit likely mean in this context?
In a dynamic entry, hit can mean a lot of things. It could be shrapnel from breaching charges, minor small arms hits that were absorbed by their armor plating, or even just impact injuries sustained during the rapid movement.
And the quick recovery suggests it wasn't serious.
It suggests non-life-threatening injuries, likely absorbed by modern ballistic plates or maybe superficial wounds. It just reinforces the narrative of a quick, decisive engagement where the forces maintain the tactical advantage from start to finish.
So the capture is secured, the forces are safe, the security systems were breached. Now we transition into the immediate aftermath. The complex legal and logistical process of transferring a head of state into U.S. jurisdiction.
And the extraction had to be just as fast and secure as the entry. Maduro and his wife were immediately taken by helicopter from the capture site.
Which is the fastest way to get a high-value target out of hostile territory.
Right. It minimizes the chance of any kind of counterattack or rescue attempt.
And their destination wasn't a standard airfield or a military base in a neighboring country. They were transferred directly to a U.S. naval vessel.
Specifically, they were transferred to the USS Iwo Jima, an amphibious assault ship.
A massive ship.
A massive ship, which then served as the secure transfer point, putting them immediately on the high seas and en route to New York. And this choice of transport is highly deliberate. It speaks to the strategic and legal intent of the U.S. government.
So why use a warship like the Iwo Jima instead of a long-range military transport plane? A plane might be faster. What's the legal advantage of naval custody?
This is a critical legal maneuver. A U.S. naval vessel, particularly when it's operating on the high seas, establishes clear and unimpeachable U.S. jurisdiction.
It's legally sovereign U.S. territory.
It is. And placing a high-value detainee there minimizes a whole host of legal and political risks. For instance, if they had landed in a third country for refueling or transit, that nation might face immense political pressure.
Or legal challenges.
Or legal challenges, maybe based on extradition treaties or international law concerning immunity, to release the prisoners.
So the Iwo Jima effectively provides a sterile, legally secure bubble.
Exactly. It insulates the entire transfer process from any legal challenges, any writs of habeas corpus, or any rescue attempts from external entities during the entire transit to New York.
A heavily armed, mobile piece of America.
It's the ultimate security platform against intervention. It minimizes the political complication of dealing with airspace or basing rights of neighboring nations, and it ensures a direct, secure chain of custody right up to the port in New York, where they would be handed over to federal marshals.
It's a textbook example of using military assets to facilitate a purely judicial outcome.
Perfectly put.
So beyond the operational success, we have to examine the administration's public justification for this extraordinary international intervention.
The why.
Why risk a massive international incident for this one capture?
President Trump offered a pretty powerful justification, and it was rooted in both humanitarianism and domestic security. He stated that the operation is ultimately saving lives because the drug trafficking is so bad it's gotten so out of control.
Which connects the action directly back to that core charge.
To the narco-terrorism conspiracy charge, yes. And it frames it not as regime change, but as a necessary counter-narcotics and counter-crime operation.
A narrative that resonates domestically.
It certainly does, especially given the ongoing U.S. opioid crisis. By framing Maduro as the head of a criminal organization that destabilizes the hemisphere and floods U.S. streets with illicit substances, the administration justifies the military capture as an essential act of national defense and public safety.
And what about the stated goal for Venezuela's future?
Well, once Maduro is removed, the administration stated the goal is to achieve liberty for the people and ultimately to have a great relationship with a free Venezuela.
And Trump noted his belief that Venezuelans Love the United States.
Yes, projecting an expectation of immediate cooperation and goodwill following the capture.
But the immediate challenge, once the military off is complete and the dictator is on his way to New York, is the profound power vacuum created in Caracas.
And this is the pivotal political decision the U.S. administration now faces. The sources give us a direct quote on how they're handling succession.
What did he say?
This is perhaps the most politically fraught component of the entire operation. President Trump stated simply, "We're making that decision now."
No.
And the administration recognized the critical strategic danger here. He said, "We can't take a chance of letting somebody else run and just take over where he left off."
So the concern is that the whole infrastructure of the narco state, funded by drug trafficking, could just continue under a new manager.
Exactly. And that concern is driving the U.S. decision to become deeply, maybe even unprecedentedly, involved in determining the country's immediate political future.
We'll plan to be involved in it very much.
Yes. And if you connect that statement back to the initial narco-terrorism charges, the implication is that this isn't just about finding a politically palatable successor.
It's about dismantling the whole system.
It's about structurally dismantling the criminal state apparatus. They have to ensure the new governance structure is not merely a replacement, but a complete break from the criminal activities tied to the previous regime.
So this shifts the focus from a surgical military strike to a long-term, high-risk political reformation project.
A huge shift.
And, well, the magnitude of forcibly removing a sitting head of state and then selecting or heavily influencing their successor, that immediately sparked a massive debate.
Domestically and internationally.
Let's pivot now to the political reaction and the intense divide this capture caused.
Yeah.
And we'll make sure we cover all the viewpoints from the source material impartially.
The polarization was instant, and it reflected some very deep divisions over executive power and international law.
Okay, so on the pro-operation side, supporters quickly mobilized around the president. They emphasized the legality and strategic necessity of the move. What were the key supporting viewpoints cited?
Well, top GOP politicians immediately defended the action. They claimed the president had proper authority to carry out the capture.
On what grounds?
That argument relies heavily on the commander-in-chief's powers, possibly interpreted through existing counterterrorism or counter-narcotics legislation, essentially arguing that Maduro, as a designated narco-terrorist, forfeited the immunity normally granted to state leaders.
The chair of the House Foreign Affairs Committee offered a more strategic endorsement.
Yes, that chair specifically noted that Trump weighed risks and future in making the decision.
Which suggests a calculated risk assessment.
It does. It suggests that the short-term international blowback was deemed acceptable, given the long-term benefit of stabilizing the region, halting drug flows, and securing a major narco-terrorist indictment.
We also saw that more visceral, punitive narrative. I'm thinking of Hegseth's comment.
Maduro said around and found out.
Yes.
And that phrase really speaks to the view that this was necessary punishment, that Maduro crossed an undeniable legal and moral line, and the U.S. was justified in delivering the consequence.
And the Venezuelan activists supported that.
They did, framing Maduro's rule as the most vivid example of socialism destroying an economy, arguing the capture wasn't just a legal necessity, but a moral one, required to save the nation from complete economic collapse.
But military action against the head of state will always generate strong opposition.
Always. And it's often rooted in international legal principles and a fear of escalating global conflict.
So we have to present the opposing viewpoints with the same depth.
Absolutely. And the condemnation was powerful and immediate. Kamala Harris, for instance, she criticized the capture as both unlawful and unwise.
Unlawful and unwise.
And that two-pronged attack is crucial. Unlawful raises direct constitutional and international law challenges to the president's authority, suggesting the executive branch overstepped its bounds.
And unwise is a critique aimed at the long-term consequences, regardless of the legality.
Correct. It suggests that even if you argue it was legally permitted, the action introduces unacceptable risk or instability. It mirrors the warning from a Democratic lawmaker who stated that nothing good comes out of this.
That's a grim prediction.
It is. That perspective posits that the blowback, the international condemnation, the destabilization, the potential for proxy conflict will ultimately outweigh the immediate gain of capturing Maduro. The short-term win creates a long-term mess.
And the condemnation from one figure, Mamdani, escalated that legal critique to the highest possible level.
He called the capture an act of war, and he registered his opposition